Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome back to another episode of the Mysticism Decoded podcast. I am your host, Olive Lev. In this episode, I wanted to give you guys an introduction to the first book of Kabbalah, known as the Book of Creation in English, and the Sefer Yetzirah in Hebrew. If you've listened to any of my pods before, you'll know that I wrote this book that you're seeing the front cover here for. And this is actually based on a translation from the Sefer Yetzirah, by the way. But the book that I wrote compares the first book of Kabbalah, the Sefer Yetzirah, to the declassified CIA document known as the Gateway Process. So, to give you a primer on how these two disparate works are actually connected, the Book of Creation, it covers two things. One is the creation of the universe, Genesis, but in a much different way than it's covered in Genesis or Bereshit in the Bible. The second thing that it covers is what is known as the creation of the golem. A golem is considered a mythical folklore figure by most, and it is basically described as a humanoid automaton who is soulless that is brought forth from the ether. Sounds very sci-fi and mystical. However, one of the main findings that I published in my book is that the golem is 100% unequivocally real, and the science to create a golem is actually laid out in the declassified document known as the Gateway Process, specifically in the section called Patterning. But more than that, the Gateway Process, which is really known mostly for its role in remote viewing, the government program remote viewing, which allows their spies to look at anything in the past, present, or future. And remote viewing was a publicly tax-funded program on the books for over 30 plus years before it was taken into black ops. But the Gateway Process is so much more than that. It actually goes into great detail regarding how the universe was created, the nature of our universe, our holographic consciousness matrix, so to speak. And it also goes into the nature and persona of the creator. And it does so obviously in modern language, modern science, very easy to read relatively. It's not an easy read at all, actually. But it's an easy read compared to the Sefer Yetzirah just because it's in modern English and it puts things in modern scientific terms. Now, the Sefer Yetzirah is written in ancient Hebrew, and it's written in enigmatic poetry. It's basically a book of poetic enigmas and mysteries that need to be unraveled and translated correctly to decipher what they really mean. And whenever you do that, or whenever I did that, you see that it actually aligns with the Gateway Process in great accuracy. Now, the reason I wrote this book is because once I became aware of the Sefer Yetzirah, which was after I became aware of the Gateway Process, I made the connection to see where they're related. So I thought, let me go ahead and buy the book because I want to read about this. I'm sure someone must have wrote it, 10, 20 years ago. But as it turned out, nobody had ever written this book that connected the Sefer Yetzirah to the declassified CIA document known as the Gateway Process. So one thing led to another, and it essentially became my destiny to write this book, which I did. And I submit to you that no one in modern times has ever translated this book the way it was meant to be translated to the extent that I have, connecting it to what we know about modern science and modern string theory specifically. And we learn even more than what modern string theory actually provides us. So whenever you go into the scripture and you know what you're looking for and you're understanding that this is actually an ancient text talking about the genesis of the universe, among other things, you get more information than we do even in mainstream string theory. Now, how is it that this book that's thousands of years old, that's actually attributed to the patriarch Abraham Avinu, and it's the only book to be ever attributed to Abraham, how could it contain this information that we're just brushing up against now in our modern digital day with our modern theories? And the answer to that question, although controversial, I've already stated this on prior pods, is because he had help from an advanced race, an advanced species, and this is going back and referring to the work of Zecharia Sitchin and ancient astronaut theory and the Anunnaki. And I've talked about on previous pods how the word Elohim is mistranslated in the Bible as gods. And there's a separate term in Kabbalah for the creator, the infinite consciousness that brought forth everything in the universe. And that term is Ein Sof, meaning no end or infinite in Hebrew. I've talked about this a lot in prior pods. I'm going to talk about it a lot in future pods. Even more so now that I'm starting the series on the Sefer Yetzirah, covering the second half of my book, where the first series was really focused on the CIA document itself, the gateway process, and I made essentially an audiobook out of it with in-depth commentary and connecting it to the Sefer Yetzirah along the way. But now we're going to get into the scripture in the following series. We're going to get in even deeper. And just to clarify, my book really only focuses on the parts of the Sefer Yetzirah that directly correlate to the gateway process. So unlike Aryeh Kaplan, who probably wrote the best known book on the Sefer Yetzirah, where he literally goes through every single line, that's not how I went about my book, because not every single section was directly related to the Sefer Yetzirah. To the gateway process. And I purposefully did not want to make this book too long because it can be overwhelming. And even at 50 or so pages, it might take you a good 1-2 months to actually fully grasp it and understand it. It says 103 pages if you go on the Amazon page, because I actually put in the appendices, the original Sefer Yetzirah plain text in English, as well as the full gateway process document. But my book, my written work itself, is about 52 pages or so. The pages are rather large. It's bigger than a regular paperback. There is an audiobook as well, which lasts about 3 hours. But that's if you read it straight through without taking really the time to understand. And it should probably take you a month or two to fully grasp it. I mean, the gateway process itself is a 30-page document that I had to spend a month on, basically 8 hours a day, to get a hold of that. So although I tried to make it as easy as possible for the layperson, we're still talking about complex topics. We're talking about string theory. We're talking about dimensions. We're talking about the manipulation of energy in atoms. We're talking about the godlike powers one can achieve in a altered state of consciousness, in a high vibratory state that you can reach via transcendental meditation. And this is part of how a golem can be created in our physical reality. We're talking about the number of the universes out there. There's not even really a word for it, but I guess if you want to use the word multiverse, but it's even beyond multiverse. So we're talking about a number of heavy topics. We're also actually, not to leave out, the origin of the shapes of the Hebrew letters and a description, a very detailed description of what I submit to you is the fifth dimension, and I bring to you how that relates to our fourth dimension to explain how we actually experience our time linearly, moment to moment as we do. So the reason why this book is so advanced, contains these modern scientific theories and even beyond them, even though it's thousands of years old and attributed to Abraham, is because Abraham wrote this under the tutelage of the Anunnaki. Possibly much of it was even dictated to him, and he just was literally the scribe. So suffice to say, if we're talking about an advanced race that's millions of years older than humanity, the actual progenitors of humanity, if you follow ancient astronaut theory and you follow my work, the race that breeded humanity, as the Bible says, we made them in our image. We, plural, are plural. Elohim is a plural Hebrew word. And if there's any Wes Huff fans out there, no, Elohim is not a consecrated plural like sheep or pig or fish. There is no singular term for sheep or fish or pig in English. That doesn't apply to Hebrew. In Hebrew, we have Elohim as the plural. There is a singular for Elohim, which is just El. El is used throughout the Torah, throughout other ancient texts. Elohim is not a consecrated plural. It is one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard. Wes Huff, all of a sudden, because he beat Billy Carson in a debate, is the best thing since sliced bread. Billy Carson, although he's a proponent of ancient astronaut theory, I'm not necessarily a big fan of his. I think he's monotone. I think he takes shortcuts. I think he does misinterpret a lot of things, especially in his book on the Emerald Tablets. But ancient astronaut theory did not begin with Billy Carson. That's not attributed to him. That's really attributed to Zecharia Sitchin. So just because Billy Carson is a poor debater and poor speaker, and I didn't watch the debate, but I heard Wes Huff probably won, but that was also reading it off Wes Huff's YouTube pages and other influencers that were Wes Huff fans or friends. Some comments I read that Billy Carson held his own for most of it. I don't know. I didn't see it. But it wouldn't surprise me if he lost. He's not a great speaker. He's monotone, whatever it is. But Elohim is not a consecrated plural. It is not like sheep in English. There is a singular word for Elohim in Hebrew. It is El. There's a better argument for why Elohim is plural, but that doesn't hold water either. Some in the Orthodox community make the claim that Elohim is plural because it relates to the masculine and feminine nature of God. However, if that were the case, then El, how would you know if it's referring to masculine or feminine? It just does not make sense. As such, we understand Elohim is plural. It is relating to the pantheon of deities, the leaders of the Anunnaki. This is who the Elohim are. And Yahweh is El Elyon of the Elohim, the leader of the leaders. This is something I've discussed in prior pods, and I'll discuss it in more detail in a future pod. I'm going to do its own dedicated pod on the term Elohim versus Ein Sof. But I did talk about that a good amount in my first pod overall. If you want to check that out, that discusses ufology and Kabbalah. But nonetheless, I just want to make the point that this amazing science is in the Sefer Yetzirah and was written by Abraham because he was taught by the Anunnaki. It could have been dictated by the Anunnaki. And literally in the setting, in the context of the Sefer Yetzirah, we are to understand that Abraham is literally there somewhere with the Anunnaki. Okay? So this is the front cover of my book. What you see here, minus the crown, which is my own flair. But from the Aleph down, this is actually taken from interpretations directly made from the Sefer Yetzirah. This is the back of my book, and this other image here is not taken from the Yetzirah specifically, but it is taken from something rather esoteric. And I just want to point out here what these letters represent going backwards and forwards. So this word is kol, this word is ya, and this word is yachal. Read from right to left in this direction, if you put the letters together, it makes the Hebrew word kleya, meaning death or extinction. Now, kol on its own means will, and ya is love. So from this, we understand that whenever you act from greed and you are involved in self-love, so to speak, the end result is extinction, kleya. That's going right to left. Now, if you go left to right, it spells the word helach. If you go from love to will, meaning essentially generosity, empathy, love for your fellow man, this spells helach, and from this we understand that this is the path to walk, because helach means to walk. So this is really the path. Now the Hebrew word yachal means creation, from right to left. But from left to right, it spells the word lachai, which means to live. So basically the idea here is that life and creation go hand in hand, and it was made for the concepts combined of essentially love, will, and the desire for X. The desire for entertainment, the desire for love, the desire for knowledge. So this is an esoteric concept, and not a coincidence that the Hebrew letters involved here spell these particular words from right to left and left to right. So really the meaning is love your fellow man, be selfless, don't be selfish. And this is the path to walk in life. And if you act opposite ignorance of the law of universal love, it will lead to your extinction. Kleya. I hope you guys liked that little parlor trick. Now, I want to end off here with some teasers I wrote in my press release, which you can find on any of my links, and all links are in the description. But among the myriad miracles that are in the Sefer Yetzirah, these are just a few of them that I mentioned just a moment ago, but I'll read this word for word just to go into a little bit more detail. And again, these are just 3 of the best teasers, but when I say best, we're talking about they're all almost equivalently amazing. So I could have chosen between 12 and 15 of things that you might say might be the best teasers. but these seem to resonate as the most eye-opening for people. So one, as I mentioned, the golem, which people believe, if they've even ever heard of a golem, because this is really an Old Testament term, it's in the Torah, and it's also in other books of Jewish commentary, such as the Talmud and Gemara. And again, the golem is considered a humanoid automaton that is soulless, which is brought forth from the ether, or a man made from clay, is how it's referred to in certain texts. Now, traditionally, this is viewed as fantasy. However, within the pages of my book, I reveal that the golem is not a myth, and it is 100% unequivocally real. The science for which lies in the Sefer Yetzirah as far as actually how to create a golem, but in modern scientific terms, it is really laid out in the gateway process in the section called patterning. Now, if you can truly grasp and understand that the golem is a real thing, this will fundamentally change your perception of reality, because it literally has to. We're talking about bringing in a human body into the shared universal consciousness via a manipulation of atoms. And this can only be done in a reality that exists in the mind and consciousness of God. Next teaser, the Hebrew letters and creation. The shapes of the Hebrew letters derive from an ancient origin and assimilated into the characters of the Hebrew alphabet are deeply explored in Connectosaurus. Understanding their connection to physical creation and consciousness yields world-changing insights closely related to the golem. So the Hebrew letters that you've come to know and love, that shape was taken from something else. And that something else is explained in the Sefer Yetzirah when translated properly, and also has to do with the golem itself. The next teaser I'd like to bring to you is regarding the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is something that has been speculated in modern scientific theory, in string theory. People have different ideas of what it actually is, its role, its function, what it represents. And I am telling you that it is actually described in great detail in the Sefer Yetzirah. It has never been translated properly in modern times by anyone else ever before. I am the first person to do so, as well as the first person to properly explain how the golem is a real object, so to speak, not mythology. And really, the Hebrew letters is not something that I originally found, but there is a confirmation for what I'm referring to here in the Yetzirah. And I am one of the only, if not the only person to make the connection to what has already been asserted about the Hebrew letters, specifically by Yitzchak Ben-Tov, who is the father, the chief scientist of the gateway process. Now, the fifth dimension, I'm able to actually translate that properly as to its role and function. And to do that, I had to go past the gateway process itself, including the gateway process, but to bring in some other books that are sort of in the same vein of the gateway process, but still lays outside of it, and I had to connect them all together, as well as essentially a confession from a government insider or a whistleblower related to the Philadelphia Experiment and Montauk Project, those mysterious, mystical government projects that many people do not understand, and many people don't know for sure whether or not it is real. But I can tell you that it is quite real. And one of the whistleblowers, namely Al Bielek, gives a testimony in regards to the fifth dimension that he learned during his time in the Philadelphia experiment and Montauk Project. And I connect that with the Gateway process and another book to the Sefer Yetzirah, and presto, we have a translation for the fifth dimension. So like I said, these are just a few of the miracles that can be talked about. There's at least a dozen plus I could have chose from. And I'm very excited to get into my next series. I've been waiting for this a long, long time. I promise you, if you stick with me on this, you are going to learn things that no one else in the world alive today is ever going to tell you. If this information was out there, I would not have written my book. I would have just bought it and consumed it. I wrote it because it doesn't exist. Now, just like any other YouTuber asks for, if you believe that I've earned your subscription here, I ask you to please like, share, comment, subscribe, all those good things, as I'm a growing channel and looking to get off the ground. And I am spreading the word of God, the actual God, Ein Sof, which is a distinct entity and concept separate from the Elohim. And if you follow my work, you will come to know that in great explicit detail. So until the next pod, happy holidays to everyone. This is about a week and a half before Christmas, or actually just 1 week before Christmas 2024, and week and a half or so to New Year's 2025. I will probably pick up with the next series in 2025. So enjoy those holidays with your loved ones. And when I catch you on the other side, get ready to take the red pill, to have your mind blown, and to understand the nature of reality, the nature and persona of Ein Sof in ways that you never thought would be possible. And as I've told friends and family of my own, many of the questions that you thought that we would never be able to have an answer to in this lifetime, we have and had the answers for thousands of years, spanning back to the mystical times in which these books were created, which Kabbalah reaches all the way back to the 1st century and really probably much older. And like I said, there is an ET component to this. That is why we have these books. These are really books of ET origins, as is actually the Bible and the major texts of all religions, because the Elohim are just not the gods of the Judeo-Christian religion, but the Anunnaki are the gods of every religion on this planet. I focus my lens through Judeo-Christian mysticism, at least I will initially, but certainly it's not limited to that. I will get into mystical texts from other religions, other peoples. Recently, I became quite interested in the mysticism of an enigmatic and largely unknown people called the Hurrians, and a fantastic subject, a beautiful word, Jadugar, and those implications, and I can't wait to get to those one day. And Jadugar, it is a word that is in many languages now. So if you have any idea or context what Jadugar is in your language, you can imagine how cool mysticism regarding Jadugar might be. And it goes even steps further in the culture of the Hurrian people themselves. And let's just say there's a lot to get to. I can cover mysticism literally for the rest of my life, and not get to everything. But as long as I'm alive, I'm going to get to as much as possible. I'm going to bring it to you, my audience, mostly for free as much as possible. That's how I prefer to do things. But if you'd like to support me, my book is available on Amazon, as you've seen here. I've made it affordable. It's just $13 for the paperback, $10 for the audiobook or Kindle. I'm not looking to put up a gate against those who seek deeper knowledge. And I do have a Substack, which is where this press release is actually posted. And I will be starting to post on Substack more frequently and actually cover my articles in my YouTube videos. And that's how I'm going to do it. For time being, my Substack is completely free. Maybe at some point in the future, I might paywall older articles. But for now, it will be free to the public. And I'm just trying to spread the word as much as I can to as many people as I can. So thank you for joining me once more. I'm really looking forward to starting the Sefer Yetzirah series. Again, this is the first book of Kabbalah, the only book to ever be attributed to Abraham. It is known as the Book of Creation in English. And hold on to your hats, folks. Have a happy holiday season. Catch you in 25. Till then, Aleph Lev out.